Welcome to NFL Nexus, your spot for a deep dive into football strategy. You know, every successful team in the NFL eventually hits this critical crossroads. The very same players who got you to the top, well, they suddenly command these massive franchise-changing contracts. And that creates this incredible tension, a real general manager's dilemma. How do you pay your superstars what they're worth while still having enough money to build a deep, talented roster? It's maybe the toughest puzzle in the entire league. So today, we're going to use the Indianapolis Colts as our case study to break down this high-stakes balancing act. And hey, if you enjoy this kind of in-depth NFL talk, do us a favor and subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It goes a long way in helping us make more of these for you.
All right, let's get right into it. This is the big question, right? It's the debate every single front office has. Do you build a champion with 9-figure contracts for the guys everybody knows, the proven, all-pro talent you can count on? Or is the secret sauce found in the margins? You know, finding those overlooked, undervalued players who can give you way more production than their cheap contract suggests. It's this constant tug of war, security versus potential. But the truth is, and we're going to see this with the Colts, it's never just one or the other. To win, you've got to be a master of both.
So let's kick things off with part one of the strategy. You got to lock down the offense, secure that foundation. Before you can even think about bargain hunting, you have to figure out who the absolute core of your team is, the load-bearing walls of the franchise, you could say. For the Colts, that all starts on offense. I mean, with a young, super talented quarterback like Anthony Richardson, you have to surround him with elite, reliable guys. It's not a luxury, it's essential for his growth. And they've got some key guys coming up on the end of their deals. So the decisions they make right now, well, they're going to define this team for years. These are the players you just can't afford to lose. And the first pillar, the absolute bedrock of that whole foundation, has to be left guard Quentin Nelson. They don't call him the wall for nothing. He is, and this is no exaggeration, one of the most dominant and physically imposing interior linemen in the entire NFL. He's been that way since day one. When you're building an offense, especially one that wants to be physical, run the ball down your throat, and protect its young QB, it all starts in the trenches. Nelson isn't just on the line, he is the line. He's the guy who sets the tone for the entire offense. I mean, just think about that for a second. A 6-time All-Pro. That kind of consistent excellence is incredibly rare, especially at a brutal position like guard. Now he's 30 and he's heading into the last year of that huge 4-year, $80 million extension he signed. For the Colts, the idea of letting a player like this, a team captain, a future Hall of Famer, even get a sniff of the open market, well, it's just not going to happen. The conversation isn't if they're going to extend him. It's just a matter of for how much and for how long. So let's talk about that price tag. A pretty realistic projection for his next contract is something in the neighborhood of 3 years for $75 million. Now that would do two really important things for the Colts. First, it locks him up through the 2029 season, which lines up perfectly with the window they're trying to build around Richardson. And second, it would make him, once again, the highest paid left guard in football, which, let's be honest, his play totally deserves. Yeah, it's a huge chunk of change, but it's an investment that pays off for the entire offense. It's peace of mind for your quarterback, and it's the key that unlocks your star running back. And that brings us to the guy who benefits most from Nelson's blocking. If Quentin Nelson is the wall, then running back Jonathan Taylor is the heartbeat of this Colts offense. He is the engine. We're in an era where people are always debating the value of running backs, right? A lot of teams go for cheaper guys, a committee approach. But Jonathan Taylor, he is the exception to that rule. His talent is just too undeniable to ignore those league-wide trends. This quote really just says it all, doesn't it? Even with the running back market changing, Taylor just keeps proving that an elite guy at that position is still a total game changer. He can wear down a defense, control the clock, and then boom, break off a 60-yard touchdown. He gives the whole team an identity. He's not just a running back, he's a strategic weapon. He forces defenses to load the box, and what does that do? It opens up everything for the passing game. And this just spells it out perfectly. I mean, just look at these numbers from the 2025 season. Over 1,500 yards, he was the absolute focal point of their entire attack. For the first 10 games, he wasn't just good. He was playing at a real MVP level. And check this out. 5 hat tricks. That's 3 touchdowns in a single game. And he did that in just the first half of the season. The analysis suggests that without that kind of production, the Colts might have been a 5-win team. That's how critical he is. He lifts up the entire offense by himself. And here is where the timing becomes so important. Just like Nelson, Taylor is going into the last year of his contract, that 3-year, $42 million deal he signed. Now think about this. If the Colts wait and he goes out and has another season that's even close to his 2025 performance, his price tag is going to explode. Right now, the top running backs make a little over $20 million a year. By getting a deal done now, the Colts could lock him in for the long term around that number, before he has the chance to go out and completely reset the market for the entire position. Okay, so on to our third and final offensive pillar, wide receiver Josh Downs, the spark. Now, his situation is completely different. We're not talking about rewarding a guy for being an established superstar. No, this is where a GM can get really clever. This is about being proactive, not reactive. It's a chance to buy low on a guy's potential and maybe save tens of millions of dollars down the road. So here's the thinking. Downs had what you'd call a down year in 2025, just 566 receiving yards. Now, for some, that might be a red flag. But if you're a GM, that's a golden opportunity. This is the moment to buy low. His contract value will literally never be lower than it is right now. If the Colts wait and he bounces back with, say, a 900-yard season next year, which he absolutely can do, his price goes way, way up. It's a calculated risk, for sure, but the potential payoff is massive. And this slide just nails that dilemma that every GM is facing with young talent. On one hand, you have the goal, the Amon-Ra St. Brown model. The Lions were smart. They extended him before he became one of the absolute top receivers in the league, and they got him at a relative bargain. On the other hand, you have the risk, what the source calls the Alec Pierce precedent. The Colts waited on Pierce, he had a breakout 1,000-yard season, and his price tag went through the roof. They ended up paying millions more than they would have if they just acted a year sooner. For a guy like Downs, being proactive could be the difference between a smart, team-friendly deal and a budget-busting one. Okay, let's take a quick breath. You've now committed, potentially, over $100 million to just 3 offensive players. You've secured your foundation, you've made a smart bet on a rising star, you've basically built a fortress around your quarterback. But that's only half the battle, right? Your offense can score 30 points, but it doesn't mean a thing if your defense gives up 35. So, how in the world do you build a good defense when so much of your money is tied up on offense? Well, this is where the whole strategy has to flip. You go from paying for certainty to hunting for value. And that brings us to the second part of this whole plan, the hunt for hidden gems. This, right here, is what separates the good GMs from the great ones. It's the art of finding value. It's about digging up those low-cost, high-upside players late in the draft or even after the draft who have 1 or 2 special traits. These are the guys who come in on cheap rookie deals, become core special teamers, provide that critical depth, and ultimately balance the salary cap so you can afford your stars. So let's look at a real-world example the Colts are reportedly checking out. This is Devin Marshall, a cornerback from NC State. Now, on paper, he's got some things that might scare scouts away. He's considered undersized for an NFL corner. But then you turn on the tape, and as the old saying goes, the kid plays big. He's the perfect example of this value-hunting philosophy, a guy whose actual on-field impact might be way bigger than his physical measurements suggest. And this slide really shows you that classic scout's dilemma. What do you trust more, the tape or the tape measure? On the left, you've got the measurables that might make some teams pass on him entirely, about 5'10", under 200 pounds. That reads to a projection as a late-round pick, maybe even an undrafted free agent. But then you look to the right at the production. You can't argue with it. 50 tackles, 2 interceptions, and a really impressive 16 pass breakups. That last number is the one that jumps out. It tells you he is always around the football, making plays. He just finds a way. And look, for the Colts, this isn't just some academic exercise. The need for quality depth in their secondary is incredibly real, and they learned that the hard way. Last season was a perfect storm. They had key guys in their defensive backfield go down with injuries for long stretches, and all of a sudden, players who were supposed to be rotational guys are now starting against Pro Bowl receivers. That experience is a painful reminder that you have to have reliable players deep on your roster, because in the NFL, next man up isn't just a saying, it's a weekly reality. And a guy like Marshall would have a serious uphill battle. I mean, just look at this list of cornerbacks on the Colts roster. The source material calls it insanely full, and you can see why. You've got established vets like Kenny Moore II at the top, and then a whole bunch of other young guys all fighting for a spot. For a late-round pick or an undrafted guy, just making the team would be a huge accomplishment. But that's exactly the point of the strategy. The Colts love to bring in guys like this, create a ton of competition, and just see who shines. It's all about churning the bottom of that roster to find those hidden gems. Okay, so let's zoom out and put these 2 very different strategies together. On one side, you've got these 9-figure deals for your offensive superstars. On the other, you're hunting for undrafted cornerbacks. They almost sound like complete opposites, right? So how do they fit together into one big, cohesive plan? Well, it all comes down to a really careful roster-building balancing act. So when you boil it all down, the modern GM's playbook is really a 2-step plan, and they have to happen at the same time. Step 1, you identify and you secure your cornerstones, your Quentin Nelsons, your Jonathan Taylors. You pay them top dollar because they are the rare foundational guys you build around. But then, step 2 is just as important. You have to relentlessly hunt for untapped value. You find the Devin Marshalls of the world, low risk, high upside guys who fill out the roster, give you that crucial depth, and play on cheap contracts. You see, those cheap contracts are what allow you to afford the superstars. The two strategies absolutely need each other to work. And this quote right here, it really sums up the why behind this whole philosophy. The injuries the Colts had last year, that wasn't just bad luck, that's just life in the NFL. Injuries can and they will derail a great season if a team isn't ready for them. That's why depth isn't a luxury, it's an absolute necessity. A Super Bowl contender is only as strong as its backups. And man, the Colts know that from firsthand painful experience. You need the stars, but you also need the role players to win it all. And that brings us to our last question for today, and I'd really love to hear what you all think down in the comments. When you look at this balancing act, which side of it is the harder job for a GM? Is it figuring out which of your own stars truly deserve those massive market-setting contracts? Because if you get that wrong, it can cripple your team for years. Or is the tougher job sifting through hundreds of overlooked college players to find that one diamond in the rough, that one Devin Marshall, who can give you incredible value on a cheap deal? It really is the ultimate challenge of building a winner in the NFL today. Thanks for checking out this explainer from NFL Nexus. And hey, if you're looking for a great gift for the football fan in your life, be sure to check out our coloring books. They're perfect for kids, grandkids, even adults. You can find the link for those down in the description or just use the QR code on your screen. We'll see you next time.